Good morning, this is Miss Billerbeck, and we're going to talk about adding and subtracting integers in a few ways. So first of all, we're going to talk about the happy and the sad faces. Okay, so when we have a positive and positive integer, we add, so we stay positive. When we have a negative and a negative integer, we add as well. When we have a negative and a positive integer, we are very negative, so we subtract. And a positive and a negative integer, we subtract as well. But we always keep the sign of the biggest number. So let's look at, well, what does that mean? So if this is 3 plus 5, of course we're just going to add it, and that's 8. But what if it's negative 3 plus negative 5? Well, we add it again. So that would be 8, but the bigger number of these, so if we're not looking at the sign in front of the number, and we just look at 5 and 3, then 5 is a bigger number, so it's negative. Now, if we had negative 3 minus 5, that's the same thing as a plus minus. So we add them together, and of 3 and 5, 5 is a larger number, so it's negative in front of it, and it's negative again. So we're keeping the sign of the bigger number. Okay, the biggest number without. So when we look at the bigger number, it's 5, not negative 5, because negative 5 is obviously smaller than negative 3. Okay, so what if we had negative 3 plus 5? Well, they're different signs, so we take the difference. So same sign sum or add, different signs take the difference. So we're going to subtract this. 5 minus 3 is 2, and the bigger number of 3 and 5 is 5, and it has a positive sign, so that's a positive 2. Okay, if we had 3 plus negative 5, we would subtract again, and that's actually the same thing as 3 minus 5. We'd subtract again, and that would be a 2, but this time when we look at 3 and 5, 5 is the bigger number, and it has a minus sign in front of it, so the number is negative. Okay, so same sign sum, and different sign take the difference. Okay, so difference. So diff is abbreviated for difference. So different sign, take the difference. Okay? And always keep the sign of the bigger number when we aren't looking at any negatives. Okay? And whatever sign is in front of the absolute value of the numbers, that might be a better way to say it. Whatever sign is in front of the absolute value of the numbers, that's the sign of the answer. All right, now we're going to do the integer walk, but we are going to use my monkeys. One doesn't want to see, and one doesn't want to hear. So these are the two monkeys, okay? All right, so first we're going to represent 3 plus 5. Or let's make a smaller number than 5. 3 plus 2. All right, so first we have 3. So 1, 2, 3 plus 2. 1, 2. So the monkey's at 5. Now let's look at 3 minus negative 2. So the monkey moves towards 3. 1, 2, 3. But whenever we have a positive sign, we're going to face this way. Whenever we have a minus sign, we're going to face that way. As far as a subtract and a add. So this is, okay. So add, we face this way. Subtract, we face that way. So we're at 3, but it's a subtraction sign, so the monkey turns around. It's looking this way now. Okay? And then it's a -2, so it walks backwards 2. 1, 2. Oh, look, they're in the same spot. So this equals 5. So 2 negatives here were equivalent to a positive. They just got there in a slightly different way. This one is facing this direction, and this one's facing this direction, but they're in the same spot. Okay, so let's put our funny monkeys back to 0. Okay, let's look at 3 plus -2. So we have 1, 2, 3 plus -2. Well, that's walking backwards 2. So this monkey's at 1. Now, if we walk this one at 3 minus 2, this monkey goes to 3. But minus turns his shoulders around and then walks forward +2. 1, 2. And again, they're at the same place. This equals 1. All right, so let's look at what happens if we had a -1 plus -2. Okay, so the monkeys are here. So -1, so we're back to -1 right there. Oops, these monkeys are getting crazy there. Okay, so we're at -1, and then we are adding -2. Well, we're facing that way because it's an add, but it's -2. So 1, 2. So it's at -3. Well, what if we did -1 minus 2? So this monkey goes to -1, but minus, so it turns around and it walks forward 2. Oops. 1, 2. So again, they're the same place. This one's facing this way, this one's facing that way. All right, and this equals -3. All right, let's look at, how about -2 minus a -4? What is going to happen? So this monkey bravely goes to -2, not knowing what the number is going to be, does a minus, and then walks backwards -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, that's at 2. This monkey says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk -2 plus 4. So it goes to -2, but then adds 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, they're the same place. Okay, but they just got there differently. All right, so let's try a different way of looking at integers. Let's use an expression map. All right, so first we're going to look at, what do these tiles mean? So I've got one tile here. We're going to say this tile equals +1. This tile equals -1. So if I were to write 3 plus 5, I could take 3 tiles like that, and I could take 3 tiles like that, and have 3 plus 5. Now this is the plus region, but let's want to write that with a minus sign, I could write that. Oh, 3 plus 5 is 8, by the way, which I knew you knew. So then we had 3 minus negative 5. Well, wait a second. The funny monkeys would have said that was positive 8. Okay, so that's 3, but the minus area is here, so that means it's minus negative 5, like that. Okay, so that's 3 minus negative 5. So what does that say? That it says if I want everything in here and they reach this line, the only way across the line is to flip. So they flip over and become positive like that, and then I have my 8 again. Okay. All right, let's look at 4 plus negative 3. So if I have 4, and then I have negative 3 here, but they're being added. Hey, what does 1 plus negative 1 equal? It's 0. So that cancels out. And 1 plus negative 1 here, another 0. And 1 plus negative 1 here is another 0. So I have 3 zeros. So this equals 1. Okay, what if I had 4 minus 3? So if I put 4 in there, and I take a minus like that, 4 minus 3, oops, I want positive 3, not negative, so 4 minus 3. And now, look at this. I've got this situation here, which is 1 minus 1, which is 0. So I have a 0 here, and I come here and I have another 0, and I do it again and I have another 0. And look, I just have 1. Okay, so they both have, there's 3 zeros there and there's 3 zeros there when I am adding my integers. All right, let's try a different situation. Let's try negative 5 plus negative 3 and see what we get. Okay, so let's flip over some negatives. Negative 5 plus negative 3. Oh, hey, look at that. They're the same color and they're on different sides of the line. Don't you think negative 1 minus a negative 1, that's really negative 1 plus 1, which is 0. So this is 0, so we have another 0. So that's a 0. And look at that, we've got another 0 here. And there's one more 0 here. Oh, but that was a minus. So we did a minus. Sorry, I set it up wrong. Oops. So negative 5 minus, let's start that one over. So I have negative 5 minus a positive 3, and a negative 3, sorry. So that's how we're getting our zeros. Sorry. That was a little confusing, huh? Okay, so we have 3 zeros right there. So now we have negative 2 left over here. Well, let's look at that. That's the same thing as negative 5 plus 3, which would be negative, 3, which would be negative 2. And that's what we got. But how would negative 5 plus 3 look? So let's look at negative 5 plus 3. Okay, well, we have a 1 plus negative 1 right here, and another 1 plus negative 1, which is a 0. And another 1 plus negative 1 is a 0. And look at that, still negative 2. Okay. All right, let's try the one that I tried to start with right here. Earlier, I tried to start with that. Okay. If you didn't see what I just did before, it's this. Okay. We had a -5 minus -3. Now let's put a plus right here and see how that changes it. Okay, so I have -5 plus -3. Okay, -5, well, that's -8. If I count up all the negative ones, that's -8. Well, what does -5 minus +3 look like? So that would be this. So -5 plus or minus +3. And then remember, if I want to get them all on the same side of the line, they get up to the line, then you just flip them over to get across the line. So again, we have -8. All right, let's do one more, and we're going to call it a wrap on integers, okay? Hopefully you'll be geniuses on this. Well, let's go with -2 minus -4. So I have -2, and then I'm in the minus region, but -4. Okay. So remember how if I get up onto the, oh, look at this. I have a 0 because -1 minus -1 is 0, because that's just really -1 plus 1 is 0. So that's a 0, and that's a 0. And then I have a minus -2. So this is 0 now minus -2, which should be 2. So if we get up to this line and we flip it over to be in this section, it's 2. So this is 2. So if I had written this differently as -2 plus 4, I wonder what would have happened. So let's do -2 and then plus 4. So we know that that's a 0 right there, and that's a 0 right there. So I have +2. And they have the same amount of zeros here when we did the integers. All right, well, hopefully that helps. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.